Okay, today we're starting with philosophy. I love this sticker sheet. It's pretty tremendous, pretty amazing, got a lot of great Pokemon on it. But now I'm on to the big sticker industry, because think about this. I don't want to open this package. I don't want to take the stickers off. I don't want to put them on anything because of how good this looks. This looks as a full packaged presentation, right? So I think what they're doing is, I already have the pull to buy another copy and use the copy stickers, put it on console setups, put it on deck boxes. That's always fun. I do appreciate Pokemon for doing that. But I was sitting there and I was like, and these are like from Pokemon Japan too, so I will end up buying another copy of this down the road. But honestly, whoever thought of that, genius. Applause. Oh my gosh. Alright, philosophy solved. One of those things that is kind of the fine line between fiction and non-fiction, or when you put human elements in a fictional story, when you put human elements in a character that's not even human. The movie Ratatouille tends to get a lot of praise to this day, and yeah, rightfully so. It was a project by the same director of Incredibles. He went from the Incredibles right into Ratatouille, working with, Pixar and Disney. And The Incredibles, ironically, was Pixar's first venture into humans as the center characters. Obviously, there was Andy, Sid, and a few other humans in Toy Story, but The Incredibles was the first time it really, was using humans as the main cast of characters. So you go from that into Ratatouille, which also uses a lot of humans, but obviously one of the main characters was a rat. And that kind of human element of anyone can cook, but then towards the end, it's more about what Ego says about not underestimating a great cook, and better yet, adding to that philosophy, it's not just a better cook, but an artist can come from anywhere, right? And so that human element of and then one of the most, I think, iconic moments in any movie is when Anton Ego does try the Ratatouille dish, which he doesn't really brush. What's funny is he doesn't brush it off as much as Colette does. Anton Ego brushes off Gusteau's as a restaurant, right? And I do love how Colette was like, "Are you sure this is a peasant's dish?" She's not against it, but she was making that comment. And she's a really good professional, and so the context of leading into this, where Anton Ego doesn't scoff at it, he just tries it, right? And of course, he has that nostalgia bomb, of memories flowing back to him and making him reflect and writing that review. That kind of lineup where we start with anyone can cook, but his response saying that it's okay if some people try to cook, but maybe they're not the best at it. But what I like about that too is that you might, let's say you try to cook, you're not the best at it. There are so many other artistic platforms that you can, put your humanity into. And that's not, and again, his review isn't even saying give up, right? The whole anyone can cook is such an interesting dynamic because, there's a blend of hopefulness and realism, right? The whole idealism, realism, you would think that those two would clash. Like, oh, I'm an optimist, but I'm a realist. I remember Silver the Hedgehog in Sonic Forces said that, and it's interesting because I'm a realist, but I'm an optimist. Like that kind of, you would think it's almost like oil and water, but it really is kind of a yin yang thing. You want, it's good to be grounded and be a realist, because there are times where you could be a toxic optimist. I actually think the show Smiling Friends depicts that pretty well. Sometimes they will depict toxic optimism, and usually in a comedic fashion. It shows how when you overextend like that, it often could recoil. And so I think in Ratatouille's case, where it starts in the core of hopefulness and saying like, hey, anyone can cook, right? But then the ending message about why do we cook, what is art, why do we share who we are, I think there's kind of a good broad branching out, where it's like, to me, like if I'm in Anton Ego's position and someone said, hey, I want to cook but it's terrible, it's like, oh well, it's okay that you're not a 5-star chef, and it's cool that you're trying. And sometimes just having that will to try is important. So even if you botch the beef ravioli, maybe it's awful, it's like, well, there's always something you can learn from this. And what's cool, and another big factor of why I do these each week, is I talk about things that I observe. And things that I observe is there's so many there's so many humanistic elements that are blended from one art or trade to another. I talk about how being, practicing in poker can help you become better at Street Fighter. 2 completely different types of games. But yet there's an element to it. There's the human expression. There's things that we as humans interact with other humans that you bring from one game to the other. And then there's things like statistics, which in Street Fighter often comes from damage and frame data, stuff like that. And so in Ratatouille's case, it's often that element of the realism of, hey, I might not be able to cook, but 1, I can keep trying, and that's already something admirable. Or 2, I can take what I'm learning from cooking and apply it to some other art form. There are movie directors that end up finding themselves writing music. There are people that write music and find themselves becoming programmers. And there's some type of, there's a form of consistent work ethic that you can carry over from each. And so what I love about Ratatouille also is, remember, this review comes from Ego having that nostalgic flashback. And the superhuman element is, I was like, okay, does that happen to everyone, though? The Ratatouille moment? And I think, people might think, oh, it has to be this grand. You have to be in a giant, nice, fancy restaurant and have to have the presentation of a dish to have that crazy flashback nostalgia bomb, right? No, mine was sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddles. I was like, oh my gosh, mine is literally those memories of waking up Saturday morning, watching new episodes of Pokemon. And every now and then my dad would say, hey, I'm going to McDonald's. What do you guys want for breakfast? Which, even to this day, McDonald's breakfast was only offered for a limited time before, lunch rolled in. And so to me, that was my own form of American Midwestern fun delicacy, right? And as a kid, you don't have much money. And so to me, it's just like, on average, right? Allowance and stuff like that. So with the average kid not having a lot of money, being treated to what was seen as kind of a rare thing was great. And I mean, a McGriddle is so good that it is the honorable mention of McDonald's main item. I mean, obviously the Big Mac is decades iconic, but yeah, I think at this point the McGriddle is definitely the honorable mention. Do I eat McGriddles as much as I do now? Back then? Not really. That's its own discussion, in terms of health, and there's people talking about like sodium nitrates, and you got to be careful with stuff like that. Regardless, it is like one of the best food items ever, and it hit me. It hit me recently. I was like, oh my gosh, that is my Ratatouille nostalgia bomb, is those moments where I still have a McGriddle every now and then. I do remember early childhood memories of watching Saturday morning cartoons, and every now and then my dad would bring them, or just getting breakfast on the road, whether it was, going to a big Pokemon tournament, hanging out with friends, that really is, oh yeah, the American's nostalgia bomb, his Ratatouille equivalent is McDonald's breakfast. Typical! It's like, yeah, actually, there is a benefit to McDonald's being on almost every corner, and that it definitely was like, oh yeah, I could go for a McGriddle right now. The classic was it sausage, egg, and cheese, chocolate milk, and a hash brown combo meal. I got that a few times going into college when I'd commute. And honestly, it made a big difference. It was that type of motivator where when I had an exam the next morning, like an early exam, I would be like, hey, if you wake up super early, go get that McGriddle combo meal. And that's something I looked forward to. And it really, yeah, you plot it all out and how I was motivated and how much joy it brought me. There's my Ratatouille nostalgia bomb dish. I hope the best for everyone in discovering, what forms of art they can put out into the world. And I want you to know that it's not just the whole idea of Ratatouille with cooking, But I think that's the idea with humanity, is that from our life experiences, from what we like, there's some form of great outlet out there that you can find a way to share how much life means to you. I love Monday.